There's a strange kind of freedom in having nothing. It's a terrifying, desolate freedom, the kind a man feels when he's adrift in the ocean after the ship has gone down. There are no choices left to make, no assets to protect, no future to plan for. There is only the vast, indifferent emptiness and the rhythmic, merciless pulse of your own regret. I live in that emptiness now. It's a quiet place. And in the quiet, I can still hear the roar of the crowd, the frantic voice of the announcer, and the sickening, final silence that followed the buzzer, the moment one bad bet torched my entire world. Before that bet, my life was a monument to sensibility. I was a project manager for a construction company, a man who dealt in blueprints and timelines, in the slow, methodical process of building things that last. My life was a reflection of my work. My wife and I had built our family on a solid foundation, a sensible mortgage on a neat suburban house, a diversified investment portfolio that grew at a slow, predictable rate, and a savings account that was our fortress against the chaos of the world. We weren't flashy, but we were secure. And in that security, there was a deep, quiet happiness. My wife was the architect of that happiness. She could take my steady, reliable income and turn it into a life filled with warmth and small, beautiful joys. She was the one who insisted on family dinners with no phones, the one who planned our camping trips in the summer, the one who made our house a home. I was the provider, the protector. My role was to keep the walls of our fortress strong, and I took that role with a deadly seriousness. But a man who spends his life building walls can sometimes start to feel like a prisoner. My life, for all its security, felt slow. It was a long, straight, predictable road, and a part of me, a secret, foolish part, yearned for a shortcut. I wanted to give my wife and my 2 kids everything, not in 20 years, but now. I wanted to be the hero who slayed the dragon of financial worry in a single, glorious blow, not the janitor who just kept sweeping the floors. The dragon, for me, took the form of sports betting. It started small, a $20 bet on a football game here, a $50 bet on a basketball game there. It was a hobby, a harmless bit of excitement, a way to make the games more interesting. And for a while, I was good at it. Or at least, I was lucky. I won more than I lost, and each small win was a hit of a powerful drug, a validation of a secret belief that I was smarter than the odds, that I could see the patterns that others missed. I was a man who understood risk management, or so I told myself. This wasn't gambling, it was a calculated investment. The bet, the one that ended everything, presented itself as the opportunity of a lifetime. It was the final game of the college basketball championship. A true Cinderella story. A small, unranked team had made a miraculous run to the finals, defying all expectations. The experts, the analysts, the entire world saw them as a fluke, a feel-good story that was about to come to a brutal end. But I saw something different. I had watched all their games. I had studied their stats. I saw a team that wasn't lucky but disciplined, a team whose unique style of play was a perfect counter to their heavily favored opponent. I wasn't just convinced they would win, I was certain. This wasn't a bet, it was a prophecy. A plan began to form in the dark, obsessive corners of my mind, a plan so reckless, so insane that I had to keep it a secret, even from myself at first. I was going to take everything we had, every penny from our savings, our fortress, and I was going to place it on this one game. The payout would be colossal. It wouldn't just be a shortcut, it would be a teleporter. We wouldn't just be secure, we would be free for the rest of our lives. I didn't tell my wife. That was the first and most profound betrayal. I knew she would have tried to stop me. She would have been the voice of reason, the guardian of our sensible life, so I lied. I concocted a story about a short-term, can't-miss real estate investment, a story that required me to move our savings into a different account for a few days. She trusted me. Of course she did. I was the protector, the man with the plan. The act of transferring the money, the entire sum of our shared past and our children's future, from our safe, boring savings account to the volatile, anonymous world of an online sportsbook was the most terrifying moment of my life. My hand was shaking as I clicked the mouse. Then came the bet itself. I typed in the number, a figure so large it looked like a typo. I selected the underdog, and I clicked confirm. In that moment, a strange calm washed over me. The fear was gone, replaced by a dizzying, godlike sense of certainty. I had done it. I had taken control of our destiny. I was no longer a cautious builder. I was a titan, a gambler for the highest stakes, and I knew with a certainty that bordered on religious faith that I was about to win. The night of the game was surreal. I told my wife I had to work late, and I watched the game alone in my office, the door locked. The roar of the crowd and the frantic voices of the announcers filled the small room. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs, and for the first 40 minutes of the game, I was a prophet. My team was playing with an impossible grace and fire. They were winning. The lead grew, and with every basket, my glorious, pre-written future seemed to crystallize. I could taste the champagne, feel the warmth of a tropical sun on my face. I started to compose the speech I would give to my wife, the triumphant, "I told you so," that would usher in our new life of effortless wealth. And then in the final 2 minutes of the game, it all fell apart. A star player fouled out. A few lucky shots from the other team. A single catastrophic turnover. The lead, which had seemed so insurmountable, evaporated in a matter of seconds. I watched, my body frozen, my mind unable to process what was happening. It was a slow-motion car crash. The final buzzer sounded. The other team had won on a last-second shot. The roar of the crowd on my television was a sound of joy for them, but for me it was the sound of a guillotine. I looked at my betting account on my laptop screen. The huge, beautiful number that had been there moments before was gone, replaced by a single, mocking, and absolute zero. It was over. I hadn't just lost a bet. I had vaporized a life. I sat in that dark, silent office for hours. The noise was gone. All that was left was the crushing, unbearable weight of what I had done. And I knew that the hardest part of my night wasn't over. I still had to go home and confess to my wife that I had gambled away our children's future on a basketball game. The drive home was a journey through a nightmare. The familiar suburban streets, the neat houses with their warm, glowing windows, seemed to belong to another world, a world I had just been permanently exiled from. I was a ghost, a dead man driving, my hands gripping the steering wheel with a white-knuckled tension. The silence in the car was filled with the frantic, screaming monologue of my own self-loathing. "Fool! Idiot! How could you? What have you done?" I walked into our home, our beautiful, safe home, and it felt like a crime scene. She was on the couch, reading, waiting up for me. She looked up and smiled, the gentle, trusting smile that had been the anchor of my life for 15 years. And in that moment, seeing that smile, knowing I was about to destroy it, was a pain more profound than the loss of any amount of money. I didn't try to soften it. I didn't try to lie. I just stood in the middle of our living room, a pathetic, broken statue of a man, and I told her the truth. I told her there was no real estate investment. I told her about the bet. I told her the number. I told her it was all gone. I watched her smile curdle, her face going through a slow, agonizing transformation from confusion to disbelief to a dawning, absolute horror. She didn't scream. She didn't throw anything. The quietness of her reaction was 1,000 times worse. She just stared at me, her eyes wide with a pain and a betrayal so deep I could feel it like a physical blow. "Our savings," she whispered, the words barely audible. "The children's college money, all of it." I just nodded, unable to speak. "On a game?" she asked, her voice cracking, the sheer, childish absurdity of it finally hitting her. I saw 15 years of trust, of partnership, of shared dreams turn to ash in her eyes. I had not just lost our money. I had revealed myself to be a stranger, a reckless, selfish monster hiding inside the body of the responsible man she thought she had married. That night was the beginning of the end. The weeks that followed were a slow, agonizing descent into a new, bleak reality. The fortress had been vaporized, and we were left completely exposed. The first consequence was the mortgage. Without our savings, we couldn't make the next payment. The carefully crafted budget that had been the scripture of our life was now a work of fiction. The life of security I had so proudly built was revealed to be a house of cards, and I had pulled out the single card that was holding the whole thing up. The argument started, not loud and fiery, but quiet and venomous. My guilt was a toxic cloud that filled every room of the house. I was a constant, walking reminder of her loss, of the life I had stolen from her and our children. She would look at me with a mixture of contempt and a deep, profound sadness. She was mourning not just our future, but the man she thought I was. She tried to hold on for the kids. She took on a second job, her body stooped with a weariness that was all my fault. But our home was no longer a haven. It was a prison of my failure. There was no joy left, only the grinding, daily reality of our financial ruin. The foreclosure notice was the final, merciful execution. The house, the physical symbol of our life together, was being taken. Packing up the rooms where our children had grown, where we had loved and laughed, was a form of torture. We were dismantling our own history piece by painful piece. The day she told me she was leaving felt inevitable, a final, logical step in the demolition I had started. She sat me down at the kitchen table in a room now filled with cardboard boxes. Her voice was flat, exhausted. "I'm taking the kids to my parents," she said. "They need a home. They need to be somewhere that doesn't feel like a graveyard. I can't look at you anymore without seeing the hole you burned in our lives." I didn't fight her. I had no right. I had forfeited my right to be a husband, a father, the moment I clicked that confirm button. I had gambled with their happiness, and I had lost. I was a bad bet, and she was finally, wisely cutting her losses. I helped her load the last of their things into her car. I hugged my children, their small bodies feeling impossibly fragile. My son, who was old enough to understand that our life was broken, wouldn't look at me. My daughter just asked, "Are we coming back, Daddy?" I watched them drive away, and the silence that descended was absolute. I was alone in an empty house with nothing but the echo of my own monumental stupidity. The bet hadn't just cost me my money, it had cost me my identity. I was no longer a provider, a protector, a husband, a father. I was just a gambler who had lost his final hand. The house was empty. My life was empty. My soul was empty. I had gone all in, and the house, the universe, had won. The quiet of an empty house is a liar. It pretends to be peaceful, but it's a canvas for the frantic, screaming noise of your own thoughts. After my family left, I stayed in that hollowed-out shell of a home until the very last day, the day the bank officially took possession. I slept on the floor in the living room, surrounded by the ghosts of our furniture, the indentations in the carpet like fresh graves. Each day was a masterclass in self-loathing. I replayed the bet, the game, the confession, a looped horror film that I couldn't turn off. When the day came to leave, I walked out with a single duffel bag containing a few changes of clothes and a photograph of my family from a time when we were still happy. I had nowhere to go. I slept in my car for a week, a humiliating rock-bottom experience that stripped away the last vestiges of my pride. I was one of them, the forgotten men you see parked in the far corners of a Walmart lot, trying to catch a few hours of sleep before the sun came up and exposed their failure to the world. Survive, I had to work. It was the only thing I could think to do. My career as a project manager was over, a casualty of the focus and the stability I no longer possessed. I started taking day labor jobs, standing in a line at 5 in the morning with other desperate men, hoping to get picked for a day of hard, physical work. I landscaped, I moved furniture, I cleaned up construction sites. The work was brutal, the pay was minimal, and it was the best thing that could have happened to me. The physical exhaustion was a powerful anesthetic. It numbed the pain, quieted the noise in my head. For 10 hours a day, I wasn't the man who had lost everything. I was just a pair of hands, a body moving through a task. My muscles ached, my hands blistered, but my mind was, for the first time in a long time, at peace. I earned enough to rent a room, a small, depressing space in a boarding house. But it was a roof over my head. It was a small, first step out of the abyss. The work became my routine, my anchor in a life that had been set adrift. I started to find a strange dignity in it. I was earning my own way, one grueling day at a time. The money wasn't a shortcut to a dream. It was the simple, honest result of a day's sweat. I began to understand the value of a dollar in a way my comfortable, salaried life had never taught me. I started to call my children. The first few calls were excruciating. The shame was a physical barrier, making it hard to speak. But I kept calling. I didn't make promises. I didn't talk about a grand future. I just asked them about their day. I listened. I was no longer the hero who was going to give them the world. I was just their dad, a quiet voice on the phone, trying to be a small, steady presence in their new life. One day, my ex-wife got on the phone. Her voice was cautious but not unkind. She told me the kids missed me. She told me she was glad I was working. It wasn't forgiveness, not by a long shot. But it was a crack of light in the darkness. It was a sign that the path forward, however long and difficult, might not be a completely solitary one. I will never forget the day I mailed my first child support check. It was a small amount, a pathetic fraction of what I used to be able to provide, but it was everything I had. As I dropped that envelope into the mailbox, I felt a flicker of the man I used to be, the provider. It was a different kind of providing, not from a place of abundance, but from a place of sacrifice. And it felt more real, more meaningful than any stock dividend I had ever received. My life is a simple, unadorned thing now. I work with my hands. I live in a small room. I take the bus. The debt I incurred from my folly is a long shadow that will follow me for years. I am, by every measure of my old life, a failure, but I am not a broken man. The bet stripped me of everything I thought I was, and it forced me to discover who I truly am. I am a man who is stronger than he knew. I am a man who can endure. I'm a man who is learning that a life's value is not measured by a single spectacular win, but by the quiet, daily effort of showing up, of doing the work, of trying to be a good man, even after you've been a fool. I lost a fortune in a single night. But in the long, slow, and painful dawn that followed, I began to find a different kind of wealth, a quiet, durable kind that no bad bet can ever take away. It's the simple peace of a tired body after a hard day's work. It's the sound of my daughter's voice on the phone. It's the freedom of having nothing left to lose. That was my story, now it's your turn. Drop your thoughts and your country in the comments. If you enjoyed this, leave a like, share it with friends, and subscribe for more amazing stories.